Hello, 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 and welcome to the instructional video for our little monster here with the horns. I love this guy so much, and I can't wait to show you how to make him. So this is how it's going to work. First, we're going to cover some health and safety stuff that you really need to know. Then I'm going to show you how to make your very own little monster character like this one. And then finally, I've got some maker tips just for you. So let's get started. These are our 5 top tips for safety if you're making one of our kits. 1. Pointy bits. You've got to look out for those pointy bits. Because our kits are so awesome, in your creative genius you might find bits and bobs and you might want to use them to stick them on a car or a character, but a little piece like this must be sanded, nicely rounded all over like this, so it's nice and safe for you. Little pointy bits like this, make sure they're sanded all the way around. You want them to be nice and smooth. 2. Wires. These little aluminium wires are awesome and they can be used for ears and tails and all sorts of creative uses, but they are sharp. So if you're going to use these wires, you must make sure that you get a piece of sandpaper and you sand the ends off like that to get rid of any sharp bits. If you're using them as a tail or something that's going to stick out, you must, using the bead in your pack, stick a bead on the end like this. If you're not going to do that, then you must fold it over like this so that there's no sticky up bits like this. It's really important. Make sure you get this one right. 3. Sanding. I know sanding's a bit boring, kids, but you've got to do it. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Pieces of wood, when they've been cut just with a saw, they have very sharp edges and they are prone to splintering. If you were to catch this on a bench or something like that, it can actually break a huge piece of wood off and leave a sharp splinter. So it's really important that we sand the edges of the piece of wood. This sharp corner here is called the arris. So when we're sanding, we're taking the arris off. You only need a few strokes like this, and there we go, that's the arris taken off. It doesn't take a lot, but you do have to do every edge, every single one. The other thing to look out for is where we've drilled holes, there might be little spiky bits sticking out like this. So before you put anything in those holes, make sure you get those spiky bits off. A little bit of rub with a sandpaper like this, and there we go, it's all done. Take your time with this one because it makes a real difference to how your character looks. 4. Super glue. Super glue is amazing and sticks things in seconds, but it also sticks your fingers to pieces of wood in seconds as well. And that's why we include gloves with all of our kits. Make sure that you wear them. And kids, if your grown-up has popped off for a cup of tea, don't use the super glue. Don't use it because that's how you end up in A&E with a big piece of wood stuck to your hand. Be safe with the super glue, guys. 5. Safety equipment. Sounds obvious, but if you're doing this on your kitchen table, make sure you put a suitable covering down so you don't get it covered in super glue or something like that. That's the first thing. Second thing is, if you're using one of these or a hammer, any kind of hammer, you should be wearing some safety specs as well, so that if you happen to do this, you're going to be fine, okay? So get yourself some safety specs if you're going to use the hammers. Lastly, this is about sanding. We just want to make sure that you're sanding in a well-ventilated area. Some of the really fine particles of wood can be damaging to your lungs, so you must make sure really you do it outside, or you might want to get yourself a suitable face covering, like this one here with the red bit in the middle. Okay, that's it. Have fun building our kits. Okay then, so let's get to it. This is how we make a cool monster like this. So first of all, check you've got all the components you need in the kit. You need 2 arms, 2 legs, 4 dowels to attach those, another dowel for the head, a couple of bits of wire, you need some feet over here, a head block, a body block, and a piece of sandpaper. You need your accessories pack, and you also need the wool that you've got in your kit as well. We suggest you use a hammer. You probably need some long nose pliers as well. And if you have got a piece of wood hanging around like this, it's really good to use as a sanding block. And finally, of course, you should have the horns in there as well. Okay then, so let's get to it. Now, before you start, the key thing is to make sure everything is sanded properly. These blocks of wood, they have little sharp bits, sharp edges, and you need to take those off. How you do that? You get your piece of sandpaper, wrap it around a block if you want to, like this, and then just start sanding away. So I'm going to come back to you when all my parts are nicely sanded. 1, 2, 3. Ta-da! That was easy, wasn't it? It's not that easy in real life. But you can see I've taken off all the sharp bits, and these look really, really cool. So where do we start when we're making the kits? Well, I think it's best to start with the arms and legs. So let's start with those. we're going to get our dowels here and we're going to pop those in. We need the short ones and we're just going to push them in like this. If you can't push them in, you could just use a little hammer, but listen for the sound change. Okay, I'm going to push it in. Did you hear the sound change? That means the dowel's gone all the way through to the other side, and that's what you want, okay? So same on these ones. Do all 4 of these. Okay, now don't keep hammering the dowel once it's all the way in, because that can split the end of the dowel or round it over, which you do not want. So okay, I've got all 4 of those now. So now we can put our legs onto the body. So the longer ones are the legs. Let's pop those on there. Okay, here we go, that's our 2 legs. The top one's there, let's get the arms on, they go in there. Great stuff, and he's looking pretty cool already, right? Awesome, so we can sit him down. Now we're gonna put the head one on, so we're gonna pop that in there. Tap it in there, and then the head goes on like so. Okay, he's already looking pretty cool, isn't he? So that's the major parts of our character put together. If they're a bit loose, like this arm here on this character, a tiny bit loose, the dowels do change a bit. What you can do is, using whichever glue you're using, either PVA or super glue, you can just glue it onto there. So I'm going to do that in a sec. Got my gloves on like a good boy. Now I am just going to put a tiny bit of super glue, really tiny part like this, and just go over the edge of the dowel. Don't need very much. And then I'm going to pop that into my character's leg like so. Okay, so I'm going to leave that to set now. It's perfectly fine inside the body, so I'll leave that to set and come back to it. Okay, next then I want to add his feet on. So what I suggest you do with his feet are put a little bit of super glue. Again, you don't need a lot. Works really well, this stuff. And then I'm going to put his leg on like this. I'm going to put him upside down. Now I want to get him in the middle, so I'm going to do that about there, I think, for my character. That's not quite in the middle, but you know, it'll be okay. Okay, and then I'm going to do the other leg. This time I put it on the block instead of on the foot. Get him nice and straightened up there. Hopefully he's about right. And then hold him for about 20 seconds and that'll be done. And we've got our 2 feet on there. So let that glue dry. Okay. Next then, we want to attach the horns. So same thing applies. A little bit of super glue just on the side. That's too much super glue. I don't know if you can see that, but that's really too much. But I'm going to put his horn on the side like this. Count to 20. Okay, actually I had to count about 30 in the end for that one. So we'll put him upright like this. And then I'm going to do the other one. I'm going to use a bit less glue this time, and then hopefully he'll stick a bit better. Okay, there we go. And this is our character with those super cool horns. Okay then, so this should be set up now. Yeah, that's set. So we can pop his other arm back in. That's pretty good there. Okay, now we're on to the exciting stuff here. This is our accessories pack. So what is in the accessories pack? Just put him to one side for a sec. Let's tip it out on the bench. Just going to put the lid back on my super glue. Tip it out and see what we've got. So we've got some pieces of scrap wood in here. These are just offcuts from when we're manufacturing stuff, but we'll come back to those. What have we got here? We've got some curls we could stick on for hair. I kind of like that, don't you? Yeah, I think I'm going to use some curls. We have got buttons we could use on the front. We got things we can use for eyes. We got all sorts of cool stuff here. So what am I going to do? I think I'm just going to go for the easy option and go for button eyes. Quite like that. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue on my character here, like so, and just drop the button onto it like that. Actually, I'm going to move it over a bit. There. And then same again, a little bit of glue here and drop the button onto it. I kind of like that. He looks pretty cool. Okay, I'm going to go straight for his mouth. I'm not going to give him a nose. So I'm going to give him a nice mouth like this. I'm going to use this wire. I'm going to use the cutting bit on the inside of my pliers here. Cut the wire. You can use a pair of scissors for this if you haven't got wire cutters, so don't worry about that. Ah, yeah, he's happy smiley. I like him. Okay, then now I'm going to put a nice bit of super glue on this. I want to make sure it's about the same shape. I think that'll do it. And then I want to try and drop this on without getting my glove stuck to it. Ooh. There we go. I'm going to use my pliers just to push it down, just make sure that it's in the right place. Okay, and then leave that alone. Okay then, maybe he's got buttons down the middle. Or maybe they're like cogs whirring to make the robot monster. Maybe cogs like this. Yeah, I kind of like the cogs, so I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to put a little bit of super glue all over here. Now, while I'm doing this, of course, you can use PVA to do this. It's nowhere near as quick, obviously. But when you do this, you have to leave it probably overnight if you're using PVA, because it just doesn't set when you're sticking things like metal onto wood. Okay. So you get the idea, guys. You can now add as many things as you want to for your character. If you want to add some hair, you just put a little bit of glue on the hair, or the PVA glue, and then put it on his head like so. And this is kind of fun because you don't really know when till you let go how it's going to come out. Okay, that's stuck. I think my character's looking pretty cool. I'm going to leave it there, but you guys can carry on and add more and more stuff. Now I'm going to put him to one side for a minute because the next bit is really important. You've got on your kit here some little bits of scrap wood and pegs and things like that. Well, what can you do with that? Well, maybe you could make another character. This one's got some pencil marks on it. I haven't got time to sand it in this video, so I'm just going to use it as it is. So why don't I add a nose? Got this little triangle left, I might as well use it. He's going to be my nose. Oh, now look, it's just moved out of position. Okay. Okay, so that's his nose stuck on there. Oh look, he could be two-faced, look. He could have two faces on this one. But I think I'm going to do something a bit different. I wonder if he has got maybe wheels for legs. Let's see if I've got 4 things. Yeah, I've got 4 little washers here. Maybe I can make it. Now each kit we send out is completely different, so you'll have to come up with your own ideas as to what you're going to make with the bits in your kit. But that is the fun of it, and you can see what else you can make out of all the little bits and bobs. So that's that side done. Let's turn it over. Okay, so here's my finished little character. He is a star. He's gonna, in his little peg here, he's gonna hold. Ooh, look, he's a little star. And he's got cool hair that goes meow when you drive him around. So not only have I managed to make my character, but I've also got a little friend for him too. That is the really fun bit about Ash & Co kits, we think. So look, I hope you had fun, guys. When you're finished, make sure you pack your glue away and save these bits. Don't throw them away. You could probably make another character out of these little bits here. There's loads of really cool things you can do. So I hope you have fun making your character. Maybe he'll turn out like this. Maybe he'll turn out like this one here, whichever you want. So have fun, guys. And don't forget to watch our tips just after this. Thanks for watching. Bye. Okay guys, so the first tip we've got is how to get these little wires in. Now, if your wire's kind of bent like this, that's going to cause you a problem. So try your best to get it as straight as possible. But especially if it's bent right on the very end here, that's super important. So once you've got it nice and straight, then the best way is to get a pair of pliers and hold the wire about a centimetre, maybe a bit less, a centimetre back from the edge, and hold it very, very tightly. Then when you're trying to poke it into one of these holes, you put it over the hole and you push and twist at the same time. Push and twist, push and twist, push and twist. Now I know that that's gone in at least 1 centimetre. Then you can pull your pliers back a little bit and do the same thing again. Push, 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 push. Now that's in far enough. Now for these engine blocks, from there I can just bend it down and then I can use the other side of the pliers just to cut off the wire there. Okay, so that's a really good tip. If you're doing a tail for an animal, same thing applies. Hold it about a centimetre back and then get it into the hole and you just twist it like this. And then that way, look, you know it's gone in and then it's really in there nice and solid. Then you can bend it and make your tail. That's tip number 1. So for the next tip, a common problem we often see is when they've got a bit worn out, the dowels that go into the hole can be a bit loose and they can kind of fall out. So we've got one here that's kind of a bit loose. You can see here, there's no kind of friction there at all. So one of the ways that you can fix this is either to glue one side of the dowel into the head like this, but then the other side can still go into the other hole where it's nice and tight. And then that way you've glued it one side but not in the other, and then you can still move the head around like this. That's one way to fix it. Should it be loose on both sides, then there's a little trick that we use in the workshop here, and that's just to get some super glue like this, put a tiny bit of super glue, just a little bit like that. Hopefully you guys can see that. Let me try and focus the camera. Okay, just a tiny bit of super glue. So you can put some on one side and then just leave it to one side, somewhere it's not going to stick. I don't know, on a piece of wood or something like that, and just let that dry. Okay, now when that's dry, that's then widened your dowel, and the next time you put it into the hole, it'll be nice and tight in there for you. But remember, you've got to make sure the glue has dried, and it might take half an hour or so, unless you've got one of those activator sprays you can use to set the glue instantly. Okay, so that's our top tip for if the dowel's loose in the hole. Okay then, so our next tip is about using PVA. If you bought one of these from us, you have to unscrew the main lid first, and there'll be a little cap in there. You have to take that out if you're wondering why the glue's not coming out. Okay, and just screw that on like that. Now, PVA is perfectly fine to use with our kits, but obviously it takes a lot longer to set. So if you wanted to glue this dowel into the head, you could put a bit of glue on here, glue it into the head like this, and then you just have to leave it for, I don't know, maybe 25 minutes, half an hour, something like that, and then you can carry on. But it's a bit more tricky when you come, say you want to stick on a piece of wire for the mouth or something like that, and you want to use PVA for that. You have to put quite a lot of PVA on, make sure that the mouth is nice and flat, but then you'll have to leave it like overnight. Probably up to 24 hours to set properly for each component that you put on there. Now, in that time, the components can move around. So our top tip for you is to get some masking tape and just put it over the components to hold them in place. And then whenever it's dry, you can take the masking tape off and the masking tape won't stick to the PVA. Top tip if you're using PVA. Okay, this is our top tip for if you are using super glue. Super glue is absolutely fantastic, but you must always wear your gloves just in case. But if you stick yourself to something and you've got a glove on, it's easy. You can take your glove off. You stick your finger, not so easy. So when you're sticking two pieces of wood together, maybe you want to stick these two pieces, you put a little bit of super glue on and you put the two pieces together, wait for about 30 seconds and then no problem, it will be set. It's a bit more tricky when you're sticking things on like washers here or buttons. So I just want to show you the best trick to do this. Now the key thing is don't use too much super glue. So let's go for the top here. Now I always put the super glue on the thing that I'm going to stick on first. I've done it in a little round shape there. I don't know if you can see how much I've put on there, but there, just a really tiny amount. And then I'm going to get my washer and just kind of drop it on top like that. Just drop it on and that's it. Alternatively, you could always use a pair of long nose pliers like we've got in our kits, our essential tool kits. They're really handy too. So let's just stick this one on like this. And I'm going to use these long nose pliers here. Going to hold the thing like this and then again just drop it on. There we go. And then just tap it just to make sure it's on. Now the key thing to that is not using too much super glue. If you use too much, it'll spread out everywhere and it will take ages to set. The other way you can do it, of course, is to hold the item that you're going to stick on in a pair of pliers like this, or tweezers would do as well, and then put a bit of glue on the part itself. See, just a little bit there. I'm going to put this on as a nose, just going to drop it, and it's not come off, so just use the lid of the super glue. Oh, there we go. Push it down, there we go. Leave that to dry now. You know, give it a good few minutes to dry, and then everything will be good. Okay, that's our super glue top tip. Our next top tip is about sanding and how you should sand. It's probably the most important part of your build, the bit that will really set your character apart and make it look amazing. When something's sanded properly, it really does look fantastic. So this is a piece of Iroko here, and you can see it has kind of lines running down the wood like this. That's called the grain. Now when you're sanding, you want to sand with the grain because you're essentially putting scratches in the wood. If you sand this way across the grain, you're going to put scratches all the way across here, and that might be something that you don't want. So when you're sanding like this, you should always sand back and forward. And the key thing is to take off sharp edges like this. So all you need to do is back and forward like this, back and forward, all the way over, and pay special attention to those sharp edges, all the way over, all the way over, like this. Then of course you want to do the end edges too, so I'm going to come across like this, across like that, same here. Okay, and then one more to go. There you go. Now that's the minimum amount of sanding you should be doing with a block like this. But of course you can get your sandpaper, wrap it round a block like this, and use that as a little sanding block. And these are really handy. So say you want to do a component like this, you want to sand with the grain, but you can see here this component's pretty weak, so we've got to be careful. So if this were me, I would put it on a bench like this, or just on a flat surface, and then I can work it back and forward. So I'm going with the grain, just nice and gently, not putting too much pressure on the part. Nice and gently like this, sand, sand, sand. Okay, great. Okay, that'll do. And then of course we want to take off the aris or the sharp edge. So I'm just going to work my way around the part. Make sure that on parts that might break like this, you hold it nice and tightly so we're not putting too much pressure on it, because we don't want to break our pieces. And then going to go back, do the other bit. Okay, well you get the idea, okay? And then you can finish off the whole part like that. Now there is one other technique that I'd really like to show you, and that is putting your sandpaper flat onto a bench. Younger kids tend to get on quite well with this one, okay? So if I want to sand the back of this piece, put the sandpaper on a bench. You can even tape it down if you really want to. Put the piece you want to sand on top of it and rub it back and forward, like this. If I want to do my edges, I can just turn it, rub the edge, turn it, rub the edge. And that's a good way of sanding components too. So there you go, they're my tips on sanding. Have fun, guys.